Hey guys, so we did it. It's all done now. As you can probably tell by the video title, I was accepted into INSEAD with a scholarship, a small but meaningful scholarship, and thus it concludes the end of a 3 to 4 year journey and starts a new one. I'll be hopefully heading to Singapore in a few months, and I'll be joining my classmates over there. I've already started to get to know some of them. I've got a house sorted in Singapore. I'll be starting in Singapore and will probably make my way to France pending the COVID situation. So I figured I'd just make this video to wrap it all up and tell you my plans. And I'm going to make it be very succinct here, unlike the first video. And I'm going to tell you straight up that I'm going to give you guys a debrief on the actual journey after getting that 710 and what happened since then. I'm going to talk about the funding gap, major hurdle for me right now, to be honest. Third, I might talk about the learnings from this whole process and what I've realized in turning 30 recently. Fourth, I'll talk about how my work ethic came to be. I think that's a key topic that I do get asked on quite a lot. And lastly, I'm going to wrap up by talking about the pros and cons of this whole journey and what you really learn in going through such a very, very long-winded experience to overcome and realize your dreams. So I'm going to split the whole thing up, okay? Okay, number one. So when I got my 710 in December of 2019, I had a score that was adequate to apply to the schools I wanted. At the time, I only wanted to apply to London Business School, and I've been working with Fortuna Admissions, in particular Emma Bond and Karen Ponte, on that particular school's essay, and I can't thank them enough for their support. That was a great experience. However, unfortunately, after the interview, for whatever reason, maybe my GPA, maybe the interviewer didn't like me, who knows, I was waitlisted, and thus entailed a long-winded waitlist journey of about 4 months or so. In that time, it sucked. It really did. I had developed this view that I only ever wanted to go to LBS, which is a very stupid way to think. Don't ever think like that, because other schools can provide you what you need, to be honest. If you have your heart set on that particular school, and look, I had my heart set on going to Europe, and at the time, I didn't see it, but INSEAD was actually a better decision for me in that a 12-month program was more suited to me given my where I am in my career. Okay, so I don't have anything positive or negative to say about the waitlist experience at LBS, but I wasn't overly happy, and the reason for that was it's a very drawn out process, and in that time, it's a very sort of draconian experience. In that you have to provide updates, that may have no bearing on your success, and I have to thank the LBS students who were fantastic. A guy named Santiago, if you watch this, thank you so much. A few other guys in that mix, and a few other girls. The names aren't coming to my head right now. Apologies. I really do thank you guys. Like, you guys are truly great bunch of people. I reached out to those guys. They helped me form a strategy to get off the wait list. I guess for whatever reason, it didn't work out. So in that time, I said, you know what, I'm going to crack on. This is during the whole lockdown period we had here in Australia, by the way. In that time, I said, I'm going to crack on, continue business as usual, and focus on work for a bit. I was working on a large digital transformation here in Australia, and had a great bunch of guys from the UK, from a UK consultancy named Elixir, out with me, and I was working alongside them. It was a great experience. In that time, I basically thought, okay, after this contract ends, I'm going to look into doing a bit of R&D for my business and in refining a few M&A strategies. Like, I work in M&A integration, separation type advisory, and I specialize in IT, as a FYI. Now, whilst I was doing that, I was also applying for round one intake, and this would have been probably June, July, maybe a bit after that. Maybe I was still working full time, probably around July, I think, maybe even September. But and I had actually commissioned the help of a guy named Alex Ruiz, and I met him on the back of a reference from a friend of mine who went to INSEAD. And Alex is a great guy. I think he's based in Barcelona. Apologies, Alex. I got that wrong. Alex was introduced to me while I was wrapping up work, and we consulted and we met. We talked about INSEAD, and his advice to me was, your GMAT's great, but your integrated reasoning score gets looked at. And he said, your IR score is insufficient. If you have time, then consider resitting and potentially jacking it up. And I thought, oh God, here we go again. So I had one lifetime GMAT attempt left, and I prepared for about a week or so, and then I did the online GMAT, and purposely just to do the integrated reasoning score, okay? I didn't add this to my list of scores, but I prepared for maybe a week. I think my score was around 690 total, and my integrated reasoning score, I got up to meet the 6+ score requirement in that time. So that's a learning lesson, okay? Never neglect IR, okay, like I did. Huge learning lesson, because some schools do look at it, okay? And INSEAD is one of those schools. And they actually look at it individually. So if you, across all your GMAT scores, if you've got, say, 7 or 8 GMAT attempts, like I have, they'll look at the integrated reasoning scores across all of them. They're not just, your highest one. So they take a collective approach, which is great. Now, I was trying to get it up a bit, but I thought, I was trying to get my GMAT up, that is, and I thought, with only a week, I'm not going to kill myself, I'll just do it. The GMAT online experience, I will say this, is terrible. At least at the time. I've had a number of students come to report their experiences to me, and many of who I was tutoring at the time, and they've all said they had something went wrong, like they had software crashing, they had someone interrupting them unnecessarily. In my case, I had a few things happen which didn't overly impact me, but I got a bit angry, and those things were in the integrated reasoning section, the calculator wasn't working, so they had to reset that. In the verbal section, they had the person monitoring me swapped shifts with a new person. And this new person, in the middle of my test, I have about 10 minutes left, pings me saying, "Can I see your pad? I haven't seen your pad." It's a change of shift. Before she said all that stuff, I said, I'd show my pad. What's the issue? And I didn't realize it at the time, but they could actually hear me. Stupidly, I didn't realize it. And this time, they kept pinging me, and when they ping you on the GMAT online, a message screen pop-up comes up, blocks your view, you can't do anything. And in that time, I'm stressing out, it's 10 minutes left, I'm losing out of time. So I just yelled out F off, really silly, thinking that they couldn't hear me. Don't do that. They didn't say anything, but they could obviously hear me. I just said it under my breath, stop effing, annoying me or something. Don't do that. That's a bit of a silly. That was silly on my part. It didn't affect me, but basically they had offered me a token to redo that test because of what happened in the verbal section and the integrated reasoning section. So at least they were acknowledging that person's ignorance to constantly bombard me. Anyway, so I applied. I started applying to MBA programs simultaneously. I had actually engaged both Alex and a US-based admissions consultant, purely for that person's expertise. Her name is Mennette Larkin, and I highly recommend Mennette. She's a lovely woman, gives it to you straight. She's great, and she's extremely knowledgeable, can craft great essays. Highly recommend her. She's an independent admissions consultant, years of experience. I hired two, because of a few reasons. The first is scalability. They're both in different time zones, and I was in Australia, I am in Australia, so I could work around the clock and basically get things done, get the volume of applications that I wanted to complete in round one done. The second was expertise. So Alex does all schools, and I know he's an INSEAD alumni, and he was great with INSEAD. But at the time, I had already engaged both of them. So I'd already engaged Mennette before engaging Alex, but then a friend of mine had recommended Alex, and he was quite affordable, and I thought, I'm going to do this, go all out this time. That was quite costly, very expensive. I applied to probably 11 schools in total. I'm just looking at my iPad now. I've got what I've got to say and my applications here. I shared this on Reddit actually. So I applied to, I don't know, probably 11 schools over the course of like 3 or 4 months. The interviews were good and mixed. The INSEAD interviews were good. I prepared like really, really hard. I really wanted to get into INSEAD because previously I didn't research INSEAD and I thought that I wasn't able to get in because of perhaps language requirements or whatever. But my lack of awareness in the first time I went through the MBA apps was a downfall. I highly recommend that you research all possible schools in the geography that you're interested in, not just rankings or not just what your mate tells you or anything like that. Okay, go all out. So that was another learning lesson there. I applied to INSEAD, reapplied to LBS, I applied to UCLA, Chicago Booth, Columbia, 2 Australian schools, Oxford, Kellogg, Cambridge, NYU, and then I was going to apply to a few other American schools. So the outcomes of that over whatever month period of conducting the interviews were as follows. I was initially I was waitlisted at INSEAD, okay? Another big kick in the head. I was dinged from LBS straight away. And I was told, okay, by Emma and Karen that they're not too forgiving on reapplicants. Just so everyone's aware of that, okay? Reapplicants are encouraged to apply, but perhaps because of Corona or because of the doubling in applications or whatever it might have been that year, perhaps they didn't like the cut of my jib. I don't know. Perhaps I said something I shouldn't have in the interview. Earned a black mark against my name. Whatever it might have been, I was dinged straight away. Anderson, I was waitlisted at and eventually dinged. And Columbia dinged. Booth, I interviewed at and I had a recommendation for, and I think I was either waitlisted or dinged. Or waitlisted then dinged. Now, the 2 Australian schools, which are great schools, admitted me with fairly chunky scholarships. Oxford, which I applied to in a later round, admitted me with a nice scholarship. Cambridge dinged me. NYU accepted. I think they waitlisted and then accepted. And then Kellogg waitlisted me, and I'm still waitlisted at Kellogg, but I've already paid So all that sort of eventuated, apologies, I'm jumping around. All that sort of eventuated and very mixed results. In that time, I sunk a lot of money into admissions consulting, into helping my parents out at their farm, and I was doing a lot of R&D on my company and basically ran my financials into the ground, to be frank. And then the results came out, I think, in December for INSEAD, and I was waitlisted. I thought, okay, don't give up. Alex was very confident that things may come around, and I didn't give up. I maintained a very positive mindset and basically employed a strategy that I came up with, and I ran it past Alex and whatnot at times and had paid off. So 5 months later, basically 3 weeks ago, up until actually it was around April, just before April 6th. April 6th is my birthday. So the timing of that news came at the best time. April 6th, just before then, I got the news, and I did something before that. Okay, I'll talk about this in another video, how to get off, but the last thing I did, I wouldn't recommend for everyone. I did it because by that time I had a bit of a relationship with my admissions officers, and I provided one update each month, and a lot had changed, right? I did the MBA math course. I made some pretty key shifts in my career, at least from the projects I was doing. I pivoted effectively, but I'll go into detail in another video. The last thing I'll say is the very last update. So on my 5th update, I made a video and I basically recapped everything and all the other 4 previous updates. And I talked about, what I wanted to get out of the program. And INSEAD genuinely was the only one apart from Oxford at the time, INSEAD was the only one I really wanted deep down. I was admitted to Oxford, and Oxford's a great school. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted to be I think the network was quite different for me. And the ROI, at least in terms of where I am in my career, was quite different for me. So, and when you have your heart set in the school, whether it be Oxford, whether it be, Tuck, I know someone that was admitted to Booth and Tuck and dinged from Tuck, and they were still they're still let down. They got into Booth, and that's how it was for me with INSEAD. I didn't want to compromise, and I know what it's like. So yeah, we made it. Like I can say this, I never thought it would eventually come through, but the person that I started off with, that I started as on this journey, and the person I am now, are completely different, for better or for worse. I think there have been many changes both in my life and career, and I think that when you're working towards something, as Drake says, when you're working towards something, people like you more when you're working towards something, not when you have it. I don't know what it's like to have it yet, but I can tell you now that when you're working towards something, whether it be the GMAT or the MBA, you meet people along the way. They want to help you out, and I'm still going through that. So look, I have to thank everyone for their support, and I've met a lot of great people in the GMAT advisory area, and I hope to continue to give back. So I'm going to go on to the next part of this video. Okay guys, I'm back for the second part. What I want to talk about now is the funding gap. I'm going to try and do something that's probably unheard of, or that few people can probably do, and I'm going to rely on each of you to help me out. I'm in a very awkward position now financially for this MBA program, because I've got to rally together, I think, roughly 180 or 190,000 Australian dollars to actually make this work. And I don't know whether Prodigy will come through. I've applied to them, and Australian banks they don't offer these types of loans. Okay, so that's because our government offers really low indexed education. They basically fund our education here. We're very lucky. They don't, however, fund overseas education. So today I'm dressed up like this because I actually spent the day both working and running around to all the banks in Australia to find whether there are alternatives in terms of loans. And I don't think there are. There are a few leads I'm waiting to get back to me on. There might be startup type loans, but they're not going to be the same. They'll come under scrutiny as well in terms of reporting and compliance objectives. So this brings me to what I'm about to discuss, and that's the crowdfunding route. At the time that this video is up, I will likely have my website up and potentially a campaign, either Kickstarter or GoFundMe. I'll have to look into it, but I'm going to explore a few routes with this. The first is, depending on I'll say it straight. I'm seeking contributions to my MBA dream. That's pretty much it. And in return, I'm going to offer people, depending on how much they contribute, certain things. Okay, this is why the Kickstarter route may make more sense. I'm going to get a website up and pretty much dump all GMAT related advice. I'm going to dispel it all. I'm going to talk about refinement and improvement techniques. I'm going to talk about share all the templates that I have, share all my notes, and talk about the psychological things I did that basically got me past the only psychological barriers that I had to get that 710, and how many of my students, Rafaela, George, Simon, Lucinda, how they all basically employ these techniques to get their dream schools. Now, I think the next level up, the next tier up, if people want to contribute a bit more, I'll share my MBA applications, which are obviously very, very confidential, my essays and whatnot. And then if people want to get more serious, and this is actually the route I do want to employ, I'm going to rely on my personal brand here, my business company, and offer security in advance, an asset I'll talk about on my website, in exchange for loans. This is crowdsourced loans, okay? If people want to explore this with me, I'm very keen to entertain one-on-one discussions, and who knows, if this works out, it'll be something to sit back and think, wow. But I'm going to offer interest rates in return in exchange for loans, because after this many years of working my ass off, I'm finally being admitted with, say, 3 months to get my shit together to go overseas. I would hate for this to all be let down because I couldn't get the funds together. So I'm going to be contacting family and friends, but my family doesn't have money. My parents are broke. They really are, to be fully transparent. My parents are migrants. They came from very broken situations. My mother's Sudanese, my dad's Irish. They're elderly, and my brother and I basically help them out. Now, I'll talk about more of the... so the other thing, I'm just looking at my iPad, I missed. So I'm going to talk about the GMAT strategies in exchange, basically develop a one-stop shop for your MBA and offer that for free. I'm going to talk about my learnings from admissions, how to write the essays, not just what... There's a few software programs out there that tell you this sort of stuff, but not just what they say. I'm also going to tell you how to navigate the admissions world and probably even share tips on consulting as well. So hopefully by the time this video is out, all this will be done, but I am relying on you guys. I really am. And who knows, it may or may not work out. We'll see what happens. So guys, I'm going to tell you a bit more about me now. I'm going to tell you how probably the key thing that guide you guys in achieving something like this, as in like going from a really crappy situation into achieving your dream or your goal, in that your goal is to get into an MBA program. I started from the low, right? 400, 430 on a Manhattan test, and then eventually overcame the education barrier, then the psychological barriers, which are huge. They were really the sticking point. And then persisted through 7 takes, and then eventually my 8th take, and actually 9th take because of the GMAT online. Now, and then to go through the failures of getting rejected, and it really sucked. It really did it sucked getting rejected from, the school that I wanted, LBS, and then going to through 2 rounds of admissions and spending all that money and doing this and that. I can tell you now that the one thing that really, really makes someone is not where they start. It's really the motivation and their work ethic. And that's what I wanted to talk about. For me, my work ethic stems from my family upbringing and probably always wanting to get out or be better. For me, my family, my parents are both migrants. My mom is Sudanese and my dad is Irish. It sounds ridiculous, right? But it's the actual truth. My mom's native language is Arabic. My dad's is Irish. Both are very much older parents than your typical parent of someone my age. And I was brought up on a farm with no money, absolutely nothing. We envied a lot of kids. We got to work from a very young age, my brother and I, that is, and we're running the farm. My dad has a heart condition, and he was one of the first people in Australia to receive one of those defibrillators, those devices that sticks out of his chest. We're very fortunate for that. Now, as a result, my brother and I, we worked jobs, throughout school. We caught a very long bus ride in the morning to get to school from the farm. We worked the farm after school. We were expected, we had customers basically. So migrants, mainly Vietnamese, Fijian Indian, and Iraqi, they would come in and buy chickens and ducks. That's what we'd have. It's like think of it as a free range farm where we'd have maybe thousands, or 800 to 1,000 or so at any given time, live animals. And we'd sell them, and they'd take them away and kill them or whatever. We'd always sell them live. We had a lot of dogs, we had some cattle and sheep, but that whole process of, from 8 or 9 or 10 years old, working a farm and lifting to make ends meet and doing whatnot instilled a level of motivation, I guess. You don't realize it at the time because you hate being in that situation, and you can never think, okay, I'm grateful for what I'm learning now, because it sucks to be in. You always want what other people have, and when I say want what other people have, you always want stability. I think that's the key thing. Now, financial, emotional, mental, all those in one. Now, as I got older, I thought, well, I'm not rich in a monetary sense, but I can become richer in other ways. So I sat down and I loved computers. I salvaged parts from garbage tips and began building computers in my spare time. I was able to combine my sales experience from the farm to actually kill it in a retail sales job after school, and basically worked full-time whilst I did full-time university. I'd buy and sell parts, I'd overclock computers, I would make custom gaming cases using putty and stuff, and I'd experiment. I'd go crazy. I'd make fan controls and sell them. Custom lighting when lighting wasn't really a thing. Water cooling when it first came in. Bunch of different things. And I'd make, slim pickings, but that helped me. It taught me a lot, and it showed me what I really like, and it showed me that curiosity can often introduce you to new people. Now, that work ethic persisted, right? I went through university, and having to provide for the family. I worked full time and did full time uni, and it nearly broke me. In fact, in my last year, myself and a friend had decided to do 5 subjects plus the summer and winter schools. So basically 12 subjects, also maybe 12, maybe more. I think maybe 14 or so. It was 5. Yeah, I think it was 13 or 14 subjects in the final year, which is crazy. We had to get special dean approval, and we did it. And we did so purposely with the intention of graduating on time with 2 years worth of full-time work experience that no one else had. That then took me, at that stage, I realized I wanted to combine IT and accounting because I had studied both in 2 degrees, and I was very lucky to be accepted into EY's Graduate Challenge program, which is a program in which they take one person on each year, and basically that person works 2 jobs effectively, hence challenge. Across the firm in IT advisory and financial assurance. I don't think that's offered anymore, but basically back then you had to be a workhorse to get through that. Now, after a few years, I persisted, and I guess my interests in bodybuilding, which were throughout the whole thing, stabilized me and just allowed me to apply that work ethic and nurture it even more. And just like interest, habits and small investments and behaviors compound over time. And I guess those formative experiences were probably transpired quite well into the GMAT when I started to do it whilst working in consulting at the time. Actually, by that stage, I'd gotten into M&A consulting and was really crush-holder in it. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about in that regard was the qualities, I think, having a work ethic and motivation. I still think about it now. I think, like right now I've achieved this thing. I've achieved this goal. What really got me there? And what can others take from it, my experience, that will help them? I think work ethic is one. And I can tell you now, if you think you're working hard, like you can work a lot harder. Try pulling in a few thousand hours on the GMAT, which is what I did. And then, be honest with yourself. The second is motivation, and you have to genuinely, you will never get your goal if you're not motivated enough. And what I mean by that is you have to genuinely want this MBA program. You have to live and breathe it. You have to know that you're gunning for a particular life, that you want this for X, Y, Z. Whatever it is, write it down. If you aren't motivated, your goal will never reach fruition. The last thing is you have to learn to deal with failure. And what I mean by that is if you come from a low starting point, you are gonna see a lot of failures. And it's through those failures. It's never linear. Imagine a 2x4, time and growth. It's never linear, right? You're gonna have a failure here, and in that failure, you review and you get better. And then you go up again, you fail again, keep going. If you don't review, if you don't sit back and have a growth mindset, what does that mean? It means I can sit back, drop my ego, say, yeah, I fucked up, and realize, okay, why did I stuff up? Well, in this process of reflection, I realized I stuffed up because I got angry in the test. I didn't exercise self-control. I didn't manage my time. I went to the gym instead of studying all this time. I don't know, something, whatever it might be. I am not taking the most effective approach to my studying, which is a very common thing. Now, the behaviors, so those 3 behaviors I talked about. The other thing that I personally wanted to do was, and ever since I was a kid, and mainly I don't know, maybe it was because I went to an all-boys school, I don't know. I wanted to be a leader among other men, and what that meant to me was nurturing deeper relationships with the opposite sex, making hard decisions that may have high impact results or that may have negative effects on some people if it's the right decision. I wanted to promote diversity. I wanted to lead by example in general, but have my own character and opinion and not be afraid to either put myself out like I'm doing with these videos if it helps people, which I know these have, or put myself out in public, like, and just, have fun with, living. We only live once, right? So I think that sort of transpired because in the following way, like I had to, when I started my company, I had to decide, okay, to leave, a very stable job. That's because I wanted to take the risk. For example, when I wanted to do an MBA program, I knew that people won't understand it, especially in Australia. No one understands MBA programs. They think, oh, you've got a chartered accounting degree. Why do you need an MBA? Most common thing I hear all the time. People who need to know will understand like why you're going down that path. Otherwise, you have to make decisions for yourself. Like no one else will understand this. Okay. Now that's pretty much what I want to say in terms of how my work ethic came to be. What I'm going to talk about really quickly now are the pros and cons of this whole experience, okay? So for me, the GMAT serves as a perpetual point of reference for my capabilities. Prior to the GMAT, this is why I probably took longer than otherwise. Prior to that, I probably had a lot of self-confidence issues manifested in me, whether it be from high school or getting shy. I don't know, but my brother and I had a lot of camaraderie growing up, and we used to be quite. We used to fight, and we'd have a go at each other. Who knows? Whatever it might have been, I think learning. And to quote Tony Robbins and what he says about neuroassociative conditioning, where certain scenarios evoke certain emotional responses. I, for whatever reason, wasn't as comfortable with my own capabilities. I could have had 800 level knowledge, who knows, but executed at a terrible rate. Okay, so what this serves for me is a time where I came through a time where I've proven I'm intellectually capable of more than I know. And that rings true to everyone. They really need to be honest with themselves, not cocky about it. I'm not saying this to be cocky. I don't go around saying this to anyone, and you shouldn't either. You should just know deep down inside that you're capable if you keep working at it. And that's 100% true. But not many people are cut out. I will say that. This is something that GMAT tutors experience. They get students that come to them and they say, oh, hey, take me from a 300 to a 700. I can tell you now, many of them aren't cut out to do it. You need to be, it's the hardest thing I worked out in my whole life. And I've got a company, I employ people, I solve fairly complex business problems. This is by far the hardest thing I've ever worked out yet. The other pro is that, yes, I can apply to many universities, but combined with my average GPA, I guess by MBA standards, it would probably take me out of the equation of some schools, some American schools, because they tend to weigh GPAs a bit more heavily, I think, than experience. The other pro is that, at least from what I've seen, I don't go around telling everyone, but from what I've seen, the score that I've got is perceived quite strongly. A lot of people think, oh, Dan, you're a smart guy, like you got a 7, whatever. And even if they haven't done the GMAT. And that's pretty cool, I guess, in that, it helps to serve your, to validate your capability in an external's view. Now, for the costs. Journey is costly, okay? And there are three or four key areas of costs. All right, the first is the physical toll. I had to let go of my bodybuilding habit, and I wasn't as strict with monitoring food. I allowed for that Friday night beer or something, or whatever it might have been. The physical toll is that I was grounded on my ass studying in all my spare time, and your stress, your hormone levels will go out of whack. Okay, that's going to happen. You have to have an outlet to manage that. Over time, my body composition, my overall well-being, because I was grounded for so long, sitting down on my ass for so long, probably changed. Your priorities shift, and that's going to happen. Like, you have to understand that this is a short-term cost for long-term gain. Now, the second thing is the mental toll, and I think that's a bigger one, okay? Because a lot of people will come to me and they're burnt out and they want me to help them and give them advice, and I can tell you now, it's gonna happen. The only thing I can suggest is, I'll talk about a few things. The first is, if you want to go at it full time, be prepared to burn out. The burnout in the GMAT is very real. You hear that quite often, but if you go at it full time, you will likely burn out. So you have to schedule incremental and sequential recharges. So the way that played out for me when I was going at it full time for a bit was, at the end of every day, I might have caught up with a friend or had Agile, or I might have played a computer game for a bit. I should have perhaps gone for walks and exercised instead, and I recommend you do that. For me, exercising was weightlifting, and for me, if I was going to do that, it would actually affect my ability, I guess, my energy for the next day. So I chose not to. The other thing is, when you work at something for so long, for me, there's two aspects. When you're working it for something for so long, and then when you are dealing with failure and the effect on your mindset. When you work for something for so long, you'll get, yes, burnt out. You can risk getting depressed, okay? And that actually happened to me. I was very depressed at one stage throughout the journey, because it's very hard. Like, no one can empathize with you. No one cares about it. And that's fine. I don't really care. But no, what I mean by that is, no one truly understands the costs that you need to take. Your friends won't understand. My friends didn't understand. They just knew that I was working at it, and some of my friends didn't understand. I became quite anxious as well with such a high workload, and GMAT and MBA applications. You get stressed. I got to meet these insane deadlines. I had anxiety. The way that manifested with me is, I had manifested anxiety because I internalized my reactions. I exerted too much self-control and didn't vent my coping mechanism. I was internalizing things, and the way that played out was, my coping mechanism, like a rubber band, just snapped. So little things would just annoy me. I was becoming a very angry person. And for that reason, I cut myself out of social situations, because I was just a completely different person. I was normal at work, but I lost my mind basically at that time, because of how my coping mechanism just snapped. And that will happen. You'll become jaded. Which brings me to the next point. When I had been declined off the waitlist, or when I'd been waitlisted actually from LBS, this again goes back to what I said in my first video. Never build something up in your head. Always diversify, okay? Diversify your applications, even if you only want one. I only wanted INSEAD right now, and I still diversified, because you never know what happens, right? I was waitlisted, and I was gonna end up at another school. So diversify. But basically, going back to what I said, I had this waitlist result from LBS, and that day, I still remember it. We were all working from home. I was at my other place where I've moved out of, and I felt sick in my stomach. I actually nearly blacked out from the stress and anxiety. I felt so sick in my stomach, I couldn't even move. I had to go lay down on my bed, and this is really early in the morning. In fact, that particular night, I had a dream that I was going to get waitlisted, and I did. I still can't believe that. Now, there are many, after that setback, and after internalizing it yet again, and not talking about it with the right people. And when I say talking about it with the right people, sometimes your friends don't help. They don't understand. They don't give the right advice. Your parents may not even help. Definitely won't help in most cases. You have to talk with people who have been down your path, okay? Now, at that point, I ended up, what did I do? Yeah, so I had this, terrible result, right? And that was probably the start of when I became jaded. I was also dealing with some very difficult characters on the client side. in my work, which didn't really help. And overall, though, like it was just a very, very, it wasn't the best period. I was very jaded as a person. What I mean, what's jaded look like? It means you become insanely direct. You have no time for anything. You don't want to waste time. Like you're not the person to wait or hold an elevator for another person. You're not happy. That's the key thing. Like you're not happy. You hate your life. And that's how I was at that point in time. The mental and physical energy exerted on the apps and all that, it'll just drain you. The last cost, I'm probably missing a few things on the mental toll. The mental toll was quite big, I think. But in the end, I never gave up, okay? I think that rings true to everyone. Plan it right. Contact me. We can plan things properly. Just make sure you speak to someone that's been down your path. The next cost was money. Obviously, money was huge, right? GMAT, I'm looking at off my iPad now. The GMAT was 9 takes, around $250 per take, so like roughly $2,200 US, $2,250 US. Admissions consulting, I think I spent around 9 or 10 grand on that, maybe even more, US. That was a huge cost, and overall, I highly vouch for Alex, Ruiz and Mennette Larkin, who helped me greatly, and Emma Bond and Karen Ponte of Fortuna, who helped me in the first round with LBS. Now, the downtime that I had from work while I was doing the R&D cost me greatly. I'd say anywhere from, say, 40 to 80 grand. The probably miscellaneous costs, tutoring over the years, books, software, probably 5 or 6 grand. So 50, 90, probably, I don't know. The downtime's a bit of an iffy one. I only included that because I only get paid when I work, because I work as an independent consultant. So for me, it was quite a bit. But, it could be anywhere from, say, 20, 25 grand, or 15K or so, up to like 90 grand if you include the downtime. The other costs, so it's quite hefty, and that's actually why I'm in a terrible position in exploring this crowdfunding option. The last thing I'll say is, the last cost, I think, is on friendships and family. And what I can say is those around you who understand will support you, but those who don't will eventually use your disposition as a reason not to interact with you, or psychologically just check out, okay, from you in their space. And I think I saw that with family and some friends, and probably even work colleagues. They mentally don't invest in you. So if I were you, I would be very careful about who you tell. Especially don't tell, if your work doesn't understand it, especially Australians, like a lot of Australian companies won't understand it. They'll think, oh, you're doing an online MBA, I can wipe my ass with that. That's all what they'll probably think. You just have to be careful, okay? Because if they don't understand it, they may not know it. They may not see value in it. And thus, if you're going down this direction, they hire you to do their work for them. So if you're going down this direction of doing the MBA, they think, he's not mentally invested in his work, therefore I'm not going to be mentally invested in him or her. Now, the real cost of this all, and this is the last thing I wanted to say, the real cost of this is that no one will know what it's like to do this, to achieve what you're trying to achieve with the GMAT or the MBA. No one will know unless they've been down your path. People may know of, but they won't actually know. And they won't know what it truly takes to go from a low GMAT to a high GMAT, or to overcome mental and psychological struggles that you endure, or they won't understand your aspirations or why you're doing these things. So you have to really know that when you go down this journey, you're going to do it alone. It's a self-driven endeavor. You have to be a highly motivated, ambitious person and trust in yourself. And if you do, you'll get there. Okay? On that note, thank you for watching, and please subscribe, and please check out my crowdfunding initiative. I really still haven't made this a dream yet. I'm relying on you guys. Please. Thank you.